Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning.
Hi.
With us. We'll just let everybody get in. Hope you've got a cuppa. I've got a cup of tea.
I've got a hot pot.
Oh, well, you win.
Oh, wow.
Ready.
Very stylish.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We'll just get everybody in. If you want to let us know where you are, I love knowing about weather all around the country. So if you let us know what the weather's like, I'm quite intrigued because it's quite sunny here in London today. So yeah, let us know where you are. Dialing in.
I got a little bit rained on the way this morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's a bit muggy today, in my view.
Yeah. It's fine.
Northumberland, Bedford.
Grey
Barnsley.
Oh, dear.
Brilliant. Yeah. We've got a good array of people.
Not Dubai.
Oh,
nice there.
Sunny Dubai. It's always sunny in Dubai.
It's boring. You want a bit of weather there.
Love it. Right, so as we're getting people in, welcome. My name's Karen. I work for Small Business Britain, and you are joining us in our second webinar all about your path to business growth. And what does that mean? We're gonna dive all into that with our experts that we've got today, who I'll introduce you to shortly. We're doing this session with Lloyds Bank Academy, and if you can see a QR code on your screen there, please do have a look at their website. It's not just open to Lloyds customers, it's open to everybody. So there's loads of information, loads of resources. Please do check it out. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panel just to do a quick introduction. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Emma, if you could just do stop share for me, that would be wonderful, if you can press that. And then we can go to our panel. So Steph, would you like to introduce yourself first? That would be wonderful.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I'm Steph, and I started Don't Buy Her Flowers 10 years ago, so in 2014. And the idea came when I had my first baby, and I was sent lots of well-meant but completely useless bouquets, which overwhelmed and exhausted, and it was another thing to look after. And motherhood hit me like a truck, which I think it does for parenthood hits most people like a truck. And so the idea was something that was a bit more thoughtful and caring and putting packages together. And now we do gifts for lots of occasions. Birthday's our biggest occasion, get well, TLC, bereavement, anything, and also corporate gifting as well. So it's really evolved since then. So is that everything? Do you need any more?
That's amazing. We'll learn more about you, I'm sure, as we get on. James and Garry, would you like to say hi?
Go on. Hi, I'm James. I'm a marketing person. I've been working in marketing for 25 years, I think it is. I started my first business in 2009, a marketing agency, and we're still running that today, as well as doing a lot of workshops like this. We talk to a lot of people about how to get their marketing strategy right, how to lay the foundations right so that they can build on from that, nail those basics, keep it super simple, not overcomplicating and making everything seem nebulous and confusing, just so we can charge more money. We make things nice and simple and easy for everyone so they can put it into action and get stuff done.
Yeah, and we have been working together we've known each other for probably 15 years, but we've been working together for the last 5 or 6. And before that, I was CEO of a tech business, marketing automation business. So marketing is still in my blood going back, but I suppose I'm a little bit more the businessy side and understanding how to help businesses grow. And I'm currently sitting on a couple of boards as well of a couple of tech startups that are thriving and doing very, very well. And I'm also quite annoyed that 10 years ago I didn't know about your website, because I probably bought far too many flowers over the last 10 years, which I'm terribly good. Although in fairness, I've stopped buying flowers because we have a monthly subscription now, so that's much easier to manage, because they do seem to tend and die out, so that's good.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Incredible. What a lovely panel. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, we have tons already in, which we'll go through. But if you do have any questions while we're chatting, if you could pop them in the Q&A box, that would be wonderful, because we just get things lost in the chat, and we will try our very best to get to them. And if we don't, we will follow them up with you afterwards. So let's get into it. Growth. Oh my goodness. So first of all, I want to talk about when you start and when you scale up and when you sort of think, right, growth is where we have to be. And I think every small business, you have to focus on growth, don't you? Or, that's the world we're in. So I mean, I think Steph could maybe start with this, but how do you scale up like on a limited budget, and when you're exhausted and when you've got maybe the kids running around and when you've got all these hats on, you know, how do you even think about it?
So I think so at the beginning, obviously I had no marketing budget. And I actually had a blog before I started the business. I started with a blog. So that was a way to connect with people. And it sounds really strategic. And my background is brand and marketing, but I kind of was like, I'm going to start a blog because then I might move towards starting this business idea that I had, rather than going, I know what I'll do, I'll connect with people. But actually that worked really well. And so I suppose doing everything you can that doesn't have a cost to it, so PR, and also not dismissing, like I came from a corporate background where there were multi-million-pound budgets, so it's very different when you're going, oh, I'm scrabbling around on my own and trying to get in, like someone's got a blog and I want to get in their blog, but or regional news, or like I suppose you go to like big PR campaigns and TV ads and everything else, it's like bring it down 10 notches, because actually what you want to build is a load of customers who support you and think that your brand is brilliant, and if you've got the right product, then that will happen. So really I did a lot of it myself, including like the packing boxes and things, and the first thing I outsourced was the packing of boxes. So that was about 9 months in. So I did it in my house, so I didn't have any overheads, which was sensible. Like now we've got so many costs that it makes it really hard when you have got to scale back, or if orders are up or down or anything like that. Whereas actually I now kind of, you won't feel it when you're in it, but I look at that early bit as a bit of a glory period where I didn't realize, but I didn't have quite such responsibility that I have now with a team and a forklift truck and all the stuff we've got now. And so actually you can be really agile and opportunities can come up and you can take them. But I think it's also kind of working out what's the one thing that's taking up too much of my time that someone else can do that they could probably be better at, that is distracting me from the things that only I can do. And for me, I was packing boxes and I had got to a point where I was like, well, I'm the only one that can pack these because they're beautifully wrapped and there's a handwritten note. Da, da. Obviously, that's not true. And now the team like to show how much better they are at it than me. But so working out, and I used to have a couple of girls from the local college would come after college and pack in my house. So it wasn't like I had to go, right, I need 3 employees and I've got to do, you know, pay them a pension, everything. It's like it's incremental. So that can all come, the kind of the big company vibe that you will probably end up with. But the starting point of what can I afford, and to get to that, I kind of almost had to work really, really hard to know that there was some cash there that could then fund that next bit. And then it was incremental. So it was really like I had somebody that was doing packing, and then I had customer services, because again, that takes up loads of time and you don't need someone in an office. I had a friend of mine who is now in our warehouse in Stroud, but she was in Spain answering queries, and doing a few ad hoc hours. And there's loads of people, and especially women, who want to work, don't necessarily want to work 5 days a week or these hours, and who are brilliant and who have found themselves like without jobs, or they're not quite in the right phase where they've got small kids, whatever. And they were brilliant. So we kind of really built it like that kind of incremental, and then it'd be like, right, I think we're ready. 2 years in, I was ready to move to a warehouse, but I knew I could afford it before I did it. And I think that's really key, because it does run away with you as you get bigger. I can see these guys nodding, like the more people you've got, the more cost you've got. Suddenly it's really hard to keep a sort of rein on that. Whereas if you can do it one at a time, and the big thing I noticed is that it allowed the business to grow. So every time we did it, I probably did it slightly later, but it was because I was sure that we could pay people and we could afford it, and then it would allow the business to grow because it would allow me more time, or whoever, to do the other bits that were needed. So that I would say is really key, that not looking at it and going, right, I need a PR person, I need some people packing, I need a marketing team, I need it, like, because that's too much, unless you raise a load of money and do it that way, which is a different thing. But I think most people probably that are listening, it's that incremental self-funded route.
Yeah. Thank you, Steph. And I just want a quick question on that. So you said, you know, I didn't go to the next step until I knew I could afford it.
Yeah.
How did you Did you have a sense check with someone else on that, or were you quite diligent yourself? Because it could be quite, people get a bit giddy at times, don't they? And it can be quite exciting to go to that next step before maybe you're ready. So how did you check in with yourself on that?
And my husband works in finance, and he'd be like, no. Which is really annoying. But actually, it was quite sensible. Like I say, it's got much harder. Like in COVID, we grew massively, and then coming out of that, and the cost of living crisis, and all the impact that's had on retail, that's become much harder to manage, and it's become my biggest challenge. You know, cash flow, finances become the biggest challenge. So that part of, and I didn't take a salary, actually. That's important to mention, for the first 4 years, and then when I did, it was pretty minimal. But I didn't have the kids I had 2 kids at the time. I've got 3 now, but I didn't have them in lots of childcare, and I was doing it from my house the first couple of years. So I was just trying to do it. I didn't have a grand plan of, oh, at some point this will be a fully fledged business. But again, I think there's probably lots of people in that boat.
Absolutely. And we hear it so much, you know, the side hustle, then you suddenly have that opportunity to make it into the business, and it's wonderful. James and Garry, you were nodding profusely at what Steph was saying. Would you like to jump in on that, about how to like scale up when funds and time are limited?
Well, yeah, the one that hit me the most, which is I was with a guy last week, and who's scaling up and going through the exact thing. He was obsessing about what type of roles are there, what should I go, what order should I do, and I just said, just do an analysis of how much you spend on every job you do. And when he did that for a month, he came back to it, and I went, right, those are the 2 areas where you can outsource, and you don't have to do that yourself. And because you're not growing the business if you're in the business. I know it's the trite business saying, but you've got to work on the business as opposed to in the business. Otherwise, it will never grow. And you go through cycles of, yeah, okay, that's fine, but then you get seconded in, you're doing things, and then suddenly you're back, and you've got to back out. And the best way to do it is just look at what you're doing and then be honest with, because he was looking for roles because he was obsessed with employing someone. And people do become obsessed with employing someone, but actually, normally it's cheaper and easier and more scalable and less scary, because it's risky employing someone. That's the thing we all hate doing, because it's suddenly like, but if I run out of money, then I've got to sack someone. I don't like doing that. That's the thing everybody's really worried about. So don't do it initially. Build into it, as you said, in terms of like, yeah, okay, I don't need to take someone on full time. I can outsource that bit. And I said, he looked at everything, and he was going to employ someone full time to be an account manager. And I just went, but you don't need to do that. And you enjoy talking to the clients. So why take that away? Because that's a role I can understand. I went, yeah, but these 2 things that take up 50% of your time. He goes, but that's not a proper job. And he's like, I know, but you'll find someone who'll do that part-time. So be a bit creative. I think that's the thing, is like, if you're growing and bootstrapping and everything else, forget all the boring, obvious business processes that people go through. Just get in your own business, know your own business, and understand what you're doing, and then go, right, okay, I'll take this little bit out, and then I can move the business forward. So I think that's probably, for me, the most important lesson that we ever learned in the early days, and it really resonated when you were just talking about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. So moving on from that, I do want to talk about hiring people later, and when the right time is to do that. But when you are sort of on your own, and you're working away, and you're maybe ready to take the side hustle to the next step, you know, what have you got in your arsenal to be able to do that? So, for example, how does your story help, you know, help your business? You know, how do you market your business? How do you attract those customers? James and Garry, do you want to step in a little bit about that? How do you find them in the first place?
Well, I think I'll jump in on this one. And I think the key to success here is definitely, you know, as you said, is understanding your business. And we always talk about this idea of making things that people want instead of making people want things. If you're trying to just, you know, come up with this thing and sell it to people, it's going to be much harder than if you identify an audience, identify a problem that you can solve, and then create a thing that solves that problem, because then you've already got customers, they're ready to go, but you just got to find them then. So I think that's certainly, and we were certainly guilty of this when I first started my first agency back in 2009. Our whole strategy was, we'll just be like a little bit cheaper than the other people. And that's a terrible strategy. And it's a strategy that a lot of small businesses use, which is thinking, well, I'll just do what they're doing, but I'll be a bit cheaper, and then but no one gets good customers that way, because people that buy things based on price are usually not great customers. Yeah. So it was certainly a case of thinking, who is that? Who are those ideal customers that we really want to work with? What do they look like? What do they do? Really, really getting a deep understanding, not just of their demographics and, you know, the sort of bits of detail that you always go to when you start thinking about identifying customer personas and things like that, but actually really understanding what they do in their life, what are they interested in, what the first, I think the biggest revelation for me was accepting that it's not my story, it's not our story, it's the customer's story. We're just trying to be a part of it. We just want to interrupt their day, we want to get involved in their life, we want to be able to become part of their story. And as soon as you stop thinking, I'm the interesting thing here, I'm going to tell everyone about how fabulous I am, how amazing my business is, and you start going, I love my customer's life is what I'm interested in. I just want to know where I can go and say, hi, I'm over here, and I know I'm over here as well, and want to just keep bumping into them all the time, then we're going to find more customers. And when you identify that, it's like, it's like when you see it, you think of you're going to buy a car and you see the car you're going to buy, and then you suddenly see that car everywhere. And it's not because there's more of those cars everywhere, it's just because you've identified that car and you start to see it. And it's the same with customers. When you see who that perfect customer is, you start to see more of them everywhere. And then you can you identify clever places to find them instead of just going to the same places that everyone else is looking for.
I'll do one of them. Shall I give the example of one of our favorite examples of being a bit smarter and not just doing what everybody else is doing? If you understand your customer, you can go to places that other people aren't. We had this with these gym guys,
personal trainers,
yeah. A couple of guys, personal trainers, really nice guys, and we were chatting to them and we were coming up with ideas of where they should market. And again, similar question: how do we get a bit creative? How do we get growing? How do we grow? And how do we do it slightly different? Because we don't want to, everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And we just went, and we were at their studio and we said, they've got some really nice cars in your car park, haven't you? We went, yeah, our customers are all they like their cars and they're all nice cars. And I was like, is there anywhere locally where they all go and get their car cleaned? And because the whole point, we were trying to get into the head of the customer, not into theirs. And where is their lives? And they were like, yeah, there's a place up the road. They all seem to go and get their cars cleaned there. So we just went up there and said to the guy who owns the car cleaning place, can we put a poster up there, please? And he went, okay. Why? And we were like, we'll give you 100 quid. And he went, okay then. And we gave him 100 quid, stuck it up there for 3 months. Next thing you know, about 2 months later, the guy said, we can't fill any more spaces. And half of them came from people who just saw, because they're sitting there, they're in a catchment. And that's what we mean. Just try and think of unusual places, but you can only do that if you genuinely understand who you're trying to target, because then you're looking for them in places that anybody can tell you, do a Facebook advert. Anybody can tell you, get an Instagram account going, do something that will go viral on TikTok. Like, yeah, great. All of those things can work, but you've got to find the other places because you are competing with people who are already established, that are bigger than you and everything else. And if you want to get going, you have to try and be a little bit more organic.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. And Steph, I would love to hear from you about, how your story has helped your business grow, because you seem to take your customers on the journey with you. They see behind the scenes, don't they, which is incredible.
Yeah, I think I think it's a massive strength for small businesses. Like I always use the reference with like the John Lewis ads and the Christmas ads and the fight for the most emotive ad and all that. It's like they're paying a lot of money to connect with people in an emotional way. And actually, if you have a small business and you've got a founder or a family or a team or whatever, you can do that like bucket loads. And I think so for me, the piece that has been really interesting is around the relationships and motherhood and really talking to women who are in this rush hour that I talk about, like this phase of life, because they are the majority of our customers. And it's very interesting that most gift companies are found, like the big successful ones, have been founded and run by men. But men aren't really buying gifts, not really. Like they're not buying gifts in a connection way. So it'll be more, so we always see more men at Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, because those are occasions when you kind of have to buy a gift. But our biggest occasions, when it's a day-to-day connection, the TLC, someone's had a shit day, all those things, those are women buying those gifts. So I guess for me, it's important not to take men out of where we're communicating, but they are our core customer. And that connection. So I'm not talking to them about product, and I'm not talking to them about gift. Often we're talking to them about the life phase they're in, the things that they connect with, what they're feeling. It's the school holidays coming up and everyone's shitting their pants. It's like, how do we do it again? How is it half term next week, by the way? Like,
Don't even talk to us. Yeah,
I think there's 3 or 4 of those. This time of year, there's like 6 half terms in the space of 2
and the
months.
bank holidays, which are a nightmare if you're in retail, like it's just really unhelpful. Anyway, so I think, but those are strengths that people have, and if you know your customers and they're not just interested in your product, you will know all of the things that are surrounding that. So I don't know, if someone who's into nutrition, you'll know there's going to be certain things they're into. So I suppose though having those conversations, other like influencers or other people who are interesting, not just, I know like quite often I think it can feel like you're just broadcasting on your social media channels, for example, and actually what you need to be doing is connecting. So yes, you've got to tell them about your product, or you've got to tell them about the sale you've got on, or whatever that is, but also just things that are of interest to them is going to be so much more engaging. And I think it's a route that we go down because we think, oh, I've got to post about my product, I've got to post about what we're doing, and actually it's just boring. Like, you know, it needs to be more engaging than that, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. And what I love what you do, Steph, because you share the gift labels, don't you, sometimes, of what people have written to someone, and it's so emotional actually, because it is the people that are having a rubbish time, or
and they're genuine. They're like, well, they come through, and every now and then, oh, we need to find some new tags. And you don't need to look at 3 weeks ago. It's like that day, and there's however many orders, and you just go, oh yeah, there's someone who's going through something awful. There's someone who's telling someone how brilliant they are. Like all those messages, and that's what it's about, connection rather than here's a box of stuff. That's what I want it to be, and that's what I didn't know that when I started. I was like, oh yeah, you could do better gifts than, you know, flowers, but actually it's the connection is what people come back for.
Yeah, and the fact that someone's thought of them is everything, isn't it?
And they've put together, they've gone, oh, I know that she likes dark chocolate, and I know that she loves a rosé, or I know that she's not drinking and she wants that. It's that putting that personal package together it's someone's thinking about you.
Yeah,
key.
It's too much. It's wonderful. Please do check out Don't Buy Her Flowers. They're amazing. So I want to talk to you now about like your story. You know how to do all that, but when you're ready to grow, and maybe when you're ready to, like what you did, Steph, you get a premises, or you hire somebody. When do you make the leap, and what do you need to surround yourself with in order to make that a successful one? James and Garry, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Steph said it brilliantly, because she's lucky. Because I mean, as much as annoying I'm sure he is, having somebody who understands finances behind you is a nice thing to have.
Oh yeah, both of those are true.
Because there's no getting away from it. You need a good plan. Like one of the questions that came in, and we always love answering when someone says, how much should I spend on marketing? But it's the same as anything. How much should I spend on this? When should I move premises? When should I hire my first person? Etc. Etc. It all comes down to having a plan. You have to have a plan. You also, what I find I talk to people about all the time is understanding their risk appetite. How much of a risk, and what your personal circumstances, where are you going to take the risk? You know, if you're in a situation where, you know, Steph didn't pay herself for 4 years. By the way, well done on that. That's incredible. I'm not sure. I think I went 4 months. That was the longest I went. But if you understand how long you can do that for, you can build that into your plan. And you have to know that. You can't just go into it and just sort of put your head down and just go, oh, this looks like a good idea, I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is going to, like, you've got to have a plan. You've got to know how much money, you've got to know what your runway is, you've got to know where your money's coming from, you know, and your circumstances. Really, that's the most important thing to me. Is if you're in a situation where, yeah, I can take a risk for a bit, it's just me, I can pay myself, I can live at home, I don't need much money, whatever else, I can stay at my parents. That's why, and I know you guys doing some great things on side hustles, that's why a side hustle is such a great way to start this whole thing and de-risk everything, because you can just start building up your side hustle and get to the point where, but again, even in a side hustle, you've got to get to a point where, okay, this is real now, I've got to do this properly. As Steph said, this is like, I'm not just coming up with a few ideas to help. I think this might be a problem. There's a point, I'm sure Steph got to it, and I certainly remember it when we set up a new agency, of going, no, this is actually the job now. I used to say my day job is this, and I'm doing this on the side because it's good fun. But there's a point where you go, no, this is the day job. And 9 times out of 10, it's a combination of financially, can I do it and what's required? And that's why, you know, when you're in services business, getting retained is an amazing thing. When you're in product business, it's about a runway of products you're getting. But then also the emotional side of, am I ready to do this? And does it fit my lifestyle and everything else? You've got to prepare yourself for that, because I think that financially you can do it, but emotionally it's actually quite hard.
That first, you know, it's a bit, you know, drawing the comparison with the kids again, the first one is really hard. The second one's not twice as hard. The first time you employ a person is challenging, because you've got to really be ready to make that decision to do that, because it's a lot of responsibility as an owner. You're responsible for paying someone's salary, for paying their wages, make sure you do everything properly, and you do need to do everything properly. But the bigger, to share sort of a mistake, I think, you know, is a mistake I made when we first started out. We made that decision. We employed one person, and that grew to, you know, 14, 15 people. And I always just thought, as a founder, that my values would just permeate the business on the, you know, because I'm there all the time. And so I'll employ people, and they'll all just do the same thing I would do, and they'll always behave like I would behave. They'll treat people the way I would treat them. They'll treat customers and the other members of staff that way. And that wasn't true. And it was because I hadn't really cemented those at the very beginning. So because I hadn't done that foundation work and hadn't done that, you know, it meant you've got to retrospectively try and, you know, figure out what that is as a team. And actually, in the end, it was a really positive experience, because we worked together to co-create some values and what the business was really all about. And some of that was my stuff, and some of it was actually stuff that came from lots of other people, and I think we were better for it. But I would say that doing that foundation work, even when you're only bringing one person in, is time well spent, because as you do grow, you will grow more efficiently and more effectively, and you'll keep the DNA of what makes your business special, which often is you, the founder. You'll keep that present through everyone else that you bring in, if you've done that bit of work at the very start.
It's also probably worth mentioning that you probably will hire a doozy. Like, you'll probably bring someone in and get and go, I think this is working. And a massive lesson for me, I've always thought, but I probably can make it work. And I think I don't know if you guys would agree, but you're better to cut and run. Like, don't try and fix it. Don't try and, if they're showing, if you feel that feeling of, I don't think this is quite right, have the conversation, like rip off the plaster, because actually otherwise you could go down the line and now I can look back and go, oh, that year I spent that much money that I didn't need to spend on that person's salary, that didn't do what I needed them to do and caused me loads of stress. And actually, I have found when I've had to have those kind of conversations, usually they know they don't want to be there either. Like, and they end up doing something that is much more suited to them. So I suppose it's just, that is part of the you've got to be a grown up. It's like part of the responsibility of having a business is being able to go, this isn't working, and not just try and be a nice person all the time.
There's a massive opportunity cost, isn't there? And that's the other thing, is you don't think about is, I'm spending this money on this person, but also so much of your headspace and your stress can go into thinking about just that problem, that you're absolutely right. You just got to make that decision quickly and, you know, to get it done.
It's genuinely the most expensive phrase in business. Oh, I'll make it work. You never, if you find yourself saying that means it isn't working, and you're basically at some point going to realize it's not going to work. And by that point, you've wasted hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's what happens.
Having said that, if you find that you're on your 6th or 7th, 10th employee and they all and it never works, then maybe
the problems,
you might need to look at your process a little bit. Maybe you're part of the problem.
Maybe the role's not the right role. There's lots of reasons. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about that, because obviously we start our business out of love and passion, and it's maybe this little side hustle, and it's growing, and it's our baby, right? We're obsessed with it. We know everything in and out of it. When we hire that person, when we find that person, how do we know what to give them and what bit to delegate and which bit are we going to give over? Because the problem could, like you say, it's inside the house a bit, isn't it? It could be us very much, that we're not relinquishing any control. So how do you manage that, would you say, or how did you?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah,
definitely.
I am actually quite a good delegator. Like, I'm really happy to delegate stuff, I suppose, as long as I feel confident in them. But when that first person that comes in and starts doing stuff and you haven't necessarily asked for everything and they're doing it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what it's supposed to be like when you've gone from doing everything yourself. So I think I mean, it's really obvious to say like what's your weakest point and but I suppose it's like we said earlier about what's taking up your time, what can be outsourced. But also I think the other thing is when you're first starting out and you're first employing someone, and back to what James and Garry were saying about roles, you need people who, in a small business, you need people who are going to get shit done and who will do almost anything within reason, but because they're going to have to do different roles, and then the opportunity is going to change and something's going to come up. So there's a lot about personality, I would say. Like, I work with my brother and two of my best mates. I wouldn't be able to work with all of my siblings, and I've got 5 of them, and I wouldn't be able to work with all of my best mates. But the way our personality, I guess it's like a mutual respect of what each other does, and very honest conversations. And also they're in it. They are so in it. And I think when you're starting out, and that won't last forever, but people who want to see it happen and have that belief in it is quite important, because otherwise you're going to be doing ridiculously hard work like you always have been, and then someone's kind of floating in, and it's hard. Like, I wouldn't go and work at a startup or a small business if you want an easy ride, because you're not going to be able to add the value that they actually need from you. But I suppose it's how you then can reward people as the business grows and expand their role. Like, I know that my team have got skills that they would not have had if they'd gone and worked in a normal job, in terms of what they've been, the opportunity, what's been open to them and stuff, but they've also worked really hard. So I think it's that personality piece is really key. And I don't know how it's hard to work out how you kind of write that on a what's the job application or whatever. But it again, it comes down to that feeling when you go, okay, because and we've had people in who you just like, they're a bit lazy. It's like, I can't have, that's just not going to, it's going to piss everyone else off as well. And that's the other thing, you've got to protect the rest of the team who are working hard.
And like you said, you before, you've got to be the grown up here, haven't you? It's your responsibility to make sure everybody's happy. I remember I had this girl come and work with me, and all I asked her to do was open some boxes, steam some clothes, and hang them on a rail. So I was like, that's quite a nice job. Put the radio on, put podcast on, and she just looked at me and she went, "Oh, I can't. I've had my nails done. Sorry," and just sat down. And I was like,
Okay.
"Work, is it?" So I ended up doing it.
And it doesn't mean they're a bad person, but this isn't the job for that. Like, when it gets busy, like in working in retail, and I'm sure most people you'll have those moments, like when you're on Lorraine or something, and it goes mental, or something like that. Or for us, like COVID, the Mother's Day was on the Sunday. On the Thursday we were on Lorraine, and it was the following Monday was when Boris announced everything getting shut down. So it was ridiculous. It was like this weird perfect storm that was also devastating for everyone. And everybody was packing, everybody was doing whatever they could do, everybody had to, like, you just muck in, and that's when you really see it. And those are the exciting bits as well, like that kind of don't feel it maybe at the time, but you look back and go, oh my god, that was mental. But everybody, and that's where it's all hands in. It doesn't matter what role you are and what job you are. And I think that's going to always be important in a small business.
Hugely. It's like a values thing, isn't it? We're all aligned and we're all hardworking. Garry and James, do you want to?
I was just going to say, like, another thing to bear in mind when you're thinking about that is about what you delegate and stuff. Is it's really important to ask yourself, what are the things you're good at and that you love doing? You can be a bit selfish when you're a founder of a small business, and you kind of should be, because I feel like this is a thing. I mean, this is a school thing. This is an everywhere thing. You're good at English, so you need to get a bit better at maths, or you're quite good at art, so you need to get better at English. So you spend so much time trying to get better at the thing you're not good at. And I certainly was guilty of this when I started out. I thought, well, I'm not great at numbers, business things. I'm all right at the creative strategy, that stuff, that's fine. So I'm going to try and get better at all those. I'm trying to learn to get better at accounts. I'm going to try and get better at all these other stuff. And as we grew, I became just like a bit of a jack of all trades. And we get, and I find myself being an HR manager and an accountant and all sorts of other random stuff, the stuff that I wasn't very good at. And I wasn't delivering value to my business at all in that regard. So you need to keep hold of the thing that you really love, because that's why you did this in the first place. And if you find yourself, if you don't make that decision early on, then you could easily find yourself sort of off in a corner somewhere doing other random things that don't bring you joy, whilst other people are doing the bits you love. And then you're just not, they're not doing that as well as I would have done it. And you're also, so you sort of resent it, and it's just a bad setup. So it's okay to be a little bit selfish and kind of keep doing and getting better at the thing you're already really good at.
Yep.
I can't answer that beyond the fact that I'm pretty sure the only reason we work together is because I like playing with numbers and he doesn't. So that's, so the answer is if you can find a business partner who does the opposite of you. Honestly, that's the great secret to success. But not everyone can find that person. So there you go.
Yeah. Or delegate wisely. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Amazing. So I want to talk a bit about, raising awareness. So, you've got your business, you've maybe hired your staff, but you've got to keep it consistent, right? You've got to be able to pay for everything. So how do you, reach those key decision makers, reach that key audience? How do you build those new relationships? How do you keep it going? Can we go to James and Garry first?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I always think about when we start talking about things like this. First of all, you're obviously trying to find businesses, but remember, there's always a person. Okay, and I think that's probably that we always remind people of that there is always a person behind the business, and that person has their own motivations, their own pains, desires. Focus in on those, because that's the best way to attract people like that. You've got to do a certain level of marketing to attract and be known and to get in front of certain people. But actually, when you're selling and you're marketing to individuals, you've got to remember they're individuals and they have their own, neurosis and everything else, and they've got their own reasons for, for example, if they've never heard of you, they're bringing you into their business, they're putting their own reputation on the line. So think about that and how can you reassure them and stuff like that. So you've really got to get into the head of the person. But the other thing, and this is such an important thing when you start up, is people don't think of referral marketing as a legitimate form of marketing, but it is so important, particularly in the early days and everything else and stuff like that, is try and, as you start to grow, utilize your network and utilize your existing customer base and utilize your existing followers and use them to expand out. Don't, but don't wait for, people just think referrals happen. They don't. They happen because you proactively make them happen. Because you push yourself, so that you ask questions. The single worst thing, apart from every small business owner always goes too cheap. Well, that's a given, okay? All of you probably listening in right now could chuck 10% onto your prices and nobody would walk away from you, and you make 10% more money. But that's a different podcast entirely, a different discussion. But the thing is, I think people always focus on, they're not persistent. Like, we get the first no and like, oh, someone doesn't respond to you and you give up too quickly. And actually, if you want to grow and if you're, want to keep a consistent level, you've got to be persistent, you've got to be consistent. Those are the two words I always use. If you're persistently asking the same questions to the same people, eventually they'll either tell you to go away or they'll do something with you. And, never be afraid to do that. People, I always use the same analogy. I'm sitting at home, and I've done this all the time. My office is on the top floor of my house. Top floor, the first floor of my house.
Top floor. It sounds like a very palatial.
It's up the stairs. and I remember buying some new running shorts, and it was from a small local business that I
That's running. He lives in a palace.
Yeah, I live in, well, whatever.
What a guy.
But brilliantly, and this is what everyone should do when they send stuff out. There's a little thing in it saying, oh, we're a small business. Every time you buy from us, it really helps us grow. Please give us a review. And I was going to do that review, but the doorbell goes. I go downstairs to pick up a package. As soon as I do that, as soon as I go downstairs, I make a cup of tea, because that's my head. I must make a cup of tea. I'm downstairs. I go and do that, and then I forget to do it. And that's all that happens. People forget. You have to be persistent and keep reminding people. That's how you grow, is you have to keep being persistent. You have to be consistently in the same places all the time.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. I think, one of my top tips for finding more of your audience, first of all, is obviously identify who that customer is, but then it's to find the people that influence that person's decision and make friends with them and become, so we could be talking about, influencers in the, in the social media world, but it doesn't have to be influencers. It can be just people of influence. It can just be, again, we work with a really small manicure, pedicure, beautician, local business serving local area. How does she get to more of her audience? And she, I said, well, where do they go? Where do your customers go? And she said, well, the most of them shop in this little boutique in the village. And she said, right, well, let's go and talk to that boutique, the owner of that boutique, and let's see if we can offer her some free manicures, pedicures, this kind of business. And she did, and she got that person to recommend her to all of their customers. And happy days, loads of new business on the back of it. So it's not just necessarily looking for someone who's got 10,000 followers on social. Just find the people in your community, the people that your audience already listens to and talks to and takes recommendation from, and go and make friends with them. See if you can give them a reason to recommend you. But as Garry said, you've got to give them a reason to recommend you. You've got to give them some sort of incentive or some kind of value exchange that's going to make them want to tell people about how great you are.
Yeah, thank you so much. Steph, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think just on the idea of like that you're talking to a person. So our B2C side is one thing, but also from we've really grown the B2B side of things, and that sort of came out of during COVID. More businesses were buying gifts, and then we're like, oh, okay, this is something, there's something in this, but also a lot of corporate gifting is dreadful. So it's like we can do so much better and much more thoughtful and work with clients to take a brief and everything else. But actually, a lot of our corporate clients have come from B2C. So they're people who've engaged with us or they've engaged with me and they've had a gift because they had a diagnosis or whatever it is. And then we then have we're putting in messaging about corporate gifting and stuff. And then they come to you and go, oh, could you do onboarding gifts for every time we have a new starter? Can you do Christmas gifts? Can you do rewards? Or we've got an event coming up and all that stuff. And they get it. So that has been amazing. So I think 1 in 13 orders through the website is actually a workplace gift. So, but that's usually it's like someone on a team going, oh, I know a good place, we'll order it, why don't we do this? So that comes as kind of like a recommendation. But all of those people potentially are then also doing bigger gifting, so that becomes a pipeline to go to. And actually, like targeting businesses is really expensive. Like going on LinkedIn or whatever like that, in a more traditional ad way is really expensive. But we've got all these people who could be buying with us for another reason through a different route. And that's really grown things, because also that B2B customer has such a much bigger value, and in terms of return, like if you get on someone's corporate onboarding gifts and every time they've got a new starter they send out one of your gifts, then they're coming back every time and you work with them and you add their branding and all that stuff. So I think that's really key to remember, back to what you're saying about like the individual that you want them to, they're buying into you as whatever, but they can come to you for something else.
And I have to just say that is a much better description of what I mean by when I talk about proactive referral marketing. That is exactly what you just described. That is just referral marketing, but you proactively made that happen. You've taken a B2C customer and turned them into a B2B because you followed up, you've made the suggestions, everything else.
I go, and we've had lots of conversation about automating that, but I actually send them, and so we've got a way of extracting the data if they're a corporate, if they look like they're a workplace customer, and I look at them and I can find out more about them. I can look at them online and everything, and then I can go back to them. I know what their job is. I can go back to them in a really targeted way, and it takes time. And I did have someone doing corporate sales that didn't work out, and I was like, I know this can work. So this is one of those occasions where I've ended up doing it, and I can't do it forever because it's a whole nother part. But I needed to make it work. I needed to show that was worth a salary or whatever that is. And and it's tailoring it, and then you get into kind of AI and all that. There's loads of ways of reaching people, but actually this is like a personal sales, like an email, and it works really well. So it just takes time.
So it's that human touch a bit again, isn't it? And yeah,
and often they come back and go, oh, actually I followed you, or I've done, or I sent my mum a gift and she loved it. And so it works. That's again going back to connection and human connection.
Absolutely. I want to touch on financials before, because we haven't got that long left, and just about cash flow in your business, because obviously we've had a few people on the chat saying, I've got my side hustle, I love it, I've fallen out of love with my day job, but I just can't quite make the leap financially, especially like what you have to do, Steph. You have to buy things months in advance, you have to buy stock, etc. What is the biggest headaches and what are the solutions that you've come to help with cash flow? Can we go to you first, Steph? Is that okay?
Yeah. So in terms of buying product, is getting on terms with everybody. So again, I had no understanding of cash flow. I came from a brand and marketing, make things look pretty, whatever background. I didn't understand product. So there was a lot of talk about cash flow is king, and I was like, yeah, until we like things like I bought up certain product for Valentine's Day that didn't sell, and then you're like, oh, I see, that's now just sitting there tied up. But getting on terms with people is really key. And also I think starting small. So when I started the business, rather than going, right, we've got to have all these gift options and all these ideas, is keeping it really focused, which meant I was tying up less money in stock whilst I worked out what worked, rather than buying up loads of product and then going, oh, that one doesn't sell. So I think that that kind of focus is really important, and keeping watch on your cash flow is really key. And it's really easy not to, if you don't really like that part of it. You can kind of suddenly be buried by it, and it's hard. Like, I think that's 100% been the toughest bit of the last few years, and I think working out where you can make cuts and always having that in your mind, like, right, if we need to, at what point do I need to potentially get rid of somebody or stop doing that, whatever. And when we really grew during COVID, I look back and go, we took on so many costs that at the time felt like we needed to, in the warehouse or marketing or whatever, because it was so manic. It was like, right, it was very hard to stay in control of it all. And now you look back and go, we didn't need to do that thing. We didn't need to do that thing. And it's very hard. So I suppose it's really thinking about each thing you're adding, because you look at big businesses. I'll never forget, I went to an event, like a big showcase thing, and there were all these people setting up, and these people had events companies coming in they were probably paying 10 grand, and they were setting up a booth, and they were nothing to do with the company. They weren't engaging or whatever. They're kind of standing behind the thing looking a bit bored. And I looked at it and thought that it would be so easy to do that when your company gets to a certain size, to go, oh, well, we'll outsource that and we'll get in a company and they'll run that. Whereas you had like people who were the founder or the team engaged in talking to people, and like they've still spent the money. They've probably spent more doing it. But I think when you grow, it's very easy to do that. And on a smaller scale, it's very easy to just add costs that you just don't need to be spending. And it's just having that in your mind, because you probably will, and then you'll have to backtrack. Just making sure you do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, great advice. James and Garry, anything to add there on cash flow?
Yeah, and we've all, we've all had those bits, a bit like you described, where you get a bit of success, and then you start thinking, oh, I can get rid of some of this stuff, and I can start not worrying too much about, you start going, right, I do this, and taking on a bit offices, and spending a bit more, and then as you say, then it's only, if you don't manage that carefully, it's only one little bad month before you're like, oh no, we've got ourselves into a right spot of bother here. So there is, I joke about not being very good on the numbers, but it is the most important thing, because you are just one lost client, one bad month away from it all just falling to pieces. But having that, making sure you do have a really decent, a proper business plan where you understand what your costs are and you understand how much it costs for you to deliver your business, and you don't, I know we were talking about like not paying ourselves. That is certainly a way to get started, but it's not a sustainable solution. So you have to value your time as if it's cash as well, because if if you can make your business successful, provided you never pay for yourself, then you haven't really made your business successful. You need to be able to make it at some point pay you a fair salary, so you can carry on doing what you're doing, and that all adds up without you creating a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, cards on the table. It's probably 20% of what I do in life is go into businesses and sort out when they've got issues with finances, because so many business owners are just, I don't really do. I mean, I joke that James doesn't do numbers, but you knew exactly how much money you were spending and you looked at it. And what you must never do as a small business owner is just go, I've got an accountant who does that bit for me. No, they're doing, but what they're not doing is forecasting. They're not looking ahead. They're not planning. And you have to have a very simple spreadsheet that looks ahead and does all of this stuff, because you will forget things. Like the classic one for me is things like software. You're like, you get a bit, you see, oh, this piece of software really helped me here. I'm going to sign up for that. And then you forget that in 3 months' time, or in 6 months' time, or in 12 months' time, it's just renewing, and it's going. And I think, as Steph said, things just become the norm, and which is why I make every single time, every 3 months, make people sit down and go through and go, right, what would happen if this came out? What would happen to the business? Would it fall apart? Okay, then you don't really need that. And you've got to be brutal, and you've got to keep looking, because all things are worth trying. But then every 3 months, you've got to look back and go, is it still worth it? And that horribly, that includes people as well as software, as well as things you buy around for the place. But you've got to be brutal, and you've got to keep going. And so a question I always ask, the first thing I go through is make them sit down and go, right, what would actually happen if you stopped buying this? What would actually happen if you turned this off? What would actually happen if this person didn't work here? Tell me genuinely, and if you can't make me believe that it would affect the business, maybe it's not a cost you can justify, particularly when you haven't got massive margins you can play with.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes you've got someone who's a bit useless, but you're like, but isn't that better than having no one there? But it's like, but if you took them out, you might be able to put someone in who is much more useful. And it's I think as well, if you're a founder and you're busy and you're knackered, that any kind of change, we're like, right, well, that's going to require training someone up. That's going to, all of those things are sitting on you. But yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much. We're nearing our end, but we've got a question from Ria, who has said, how would you suggest getting a co-founder on board without an initial salary compensation, but with a stake in the business? So she said, I have an e-commerce development agency since 2014, and I am looking for a co-founder who is good with sales and marketing. I am done both running the business ops and marketing. Fair enough. Any advice there?
Do you need a co-founder or do you need to employ someone? I would say, like before, when I had the idea for the business, I went to a few different people and I was like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this thing because I was scared to do it on my own. And this person already has been doing it on their own, but and I'm so glad I did it on my own, because actually I had 2 small kids. I ended up having a 3rd kid. Like I don't know how I would have managed it with another person, but everyone I had the conversations with, the main thing that I was like, what are they going to do that I can't do? And I couldn't quite see, not that I can do everything, but I couldn't see. And you're going to have to pay them half the money if they're an equal co-founder, and you're going to have to earn double the amount of money to make what you need to make. And so I think it's and I've also, there's a lot of stories of co-founder relationships going wrong, right? And so I think it is a really tricky thing to it's a really tricky thing to do, and working out where your passions align. But I think what you were saying earlier as well about that, you can't be the same, you can't have the same skills or the same specialities, because that's not going to work.
Yeah, I was obsessed with this when I started on my own. I didn't mean to start my business; it just sort of happened, and so I really felt like mega imposter syndrome, like I could not do this on my own at all. Even when I'm sitting in a room with 15 employees, I still thought, I don't know how something's going to go wrong any minute now. And I would have meetings all the time with people about possibly bringing them in as part of the business, because I was really thought that was the right solution for me, that would really share the load and it would make life so much easier. And it was only when I started doing things like, stuff like all everyone here watching is doing right now, and working with the mentors that people like Small Business Britain can provide. And we had a local growth hub where they were able to provide mentors and people to talk to, and suddenly you realize that the thing I wanted was just someone to talk to, was just someone to share the load, to get a bit of advice, to have that conversation with people. And then that just went away, because I realized that it wasn't really that I needed someone to help me run my business. I just needed someone to share the load a little bit and give me a bit of advice, to hold me a bit accountable, and a bit of a hug. Sometimes a hug, sometimes a kick in the ass. Both those things are equally valuable. We all need them from time to time. And actually, when I stopped looking, that's when, the only reason that Garry and I started working together and Garry joined the business was because we were just having a conversation right in the middle of COVID, having a conversation about what he was going to do next and what I was thinking of doing next. And it was the same thing, but we're both completely different when it comes to skills and abilities and what, so your goals are aligned, but your skills and abilities are different. That is a perfect recipe for a good co-founder relationship, or a good, partnership relationship. But I really wouldn't jump into it just because you want someone to give you a bit of a hand, because you can find that
where you're feeling overwhelmed. I think that's really tricky, isn't it? Because it's like, oh my God, but if I had someone to share this with, then that would be, but again, if they're the right person, they could take a load of it off you, but they don't need to be a co-founder.
Yeah,
just a good employee.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said it, because I would have bored on about it forever. But I find a mentor. Honest to God, I joked like that part of somebody said my son listened to me. He happened to be in the office with me at home, listened to me talk to this guy that I work with in Ireland. I talked to him for an hour and I got off the call and he went, "Does he pay you to do that?" And I went, yes. He went, but you spent 20 minutes of that talking about Arsenal football. And I went, yeah, because he wants someone to talk to, and then he'll bring up a couple of business problems, and then it's sometimes you just need an accountability buddy. That's how he describes me. And literally, because I look at his finances, I'm written down in there as accountability buddy, somebody you can talk to, share stress when he's got stress, but also will call him out, going, but you said you'd do this by now. Why haven't you done it? Because sometimes that's all you need is someone. Now, sometimes you can be lucky enough, someone in the house can do that for you. Maybe your partner can do that for you. But sometimes you just need someone externally who can just basically be the person that goes, yeah, why haven't you done that? Said you were going to do that. Or don't worry, it's not that bad. It'll be okay. You just need someone to talk to, really. What was the phrase? It's good to talk. I can't remember that. Bob Hoskins, I think. Bob Hoskins.
Yeah. But no, completely. And we see this all the time with our small business community. You know, they find buddies or people that are in the same world as them and just have that accountability together. It's everything, isn't it? Just a little check-in. And we've got to come to the end of this, unfortunately. I'm just going to quickly share my screen to just show you about the there we go. Okay. So thank you. I want to thank our panelists so much for this. This was amazing. I so appreciate it, Steph and James and Garry, for all your input and questions and complete insight. If you've got any more questions, if this has, you know, inspired you to talk a bit more about growth or to have a think or to make that leap, do let us know, because we would love to hear from you. And it is a scary thing, isn't it, when you're ready to start your business? But you know what, there is support out there from Small Business Britain, from Lloyds Bank Academy. There's, again, you know, all the business learning resources are all here for you as well. And do let us know about the webinar. You know, let us know how you found it, how helpful it was, if there's anything else you would like to know in growth. And we'll be doing a lot more of these. So please do visit Lloyds Bank Academy. Here's the website there. A huge thanks to Steph, and do follow Don't Buy Flowers. It is an amazing business model. You have worked relentlessly, Steph, and it's wonderful to watch your journey while she's carrying 3 children. God love her. And James and Garry, thank you so much. The work you do in the marketing world is incredible. So a huge thanks to everybody, and we will see you very soon. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.